Alright, I'm ready to start reassembling my Dana 30 front axle, and while doing so we're going to do some couple of upgrades. First of all, the original had this open differential, and I think I wanted something a little better than that, so I went with this. This is the Spartan Helical limited slip differential, and it's got helical gears in there, and it works on the concept just like what I put in the rear end. That is, there's some small diameter helical gears and there's some larger ones. The smaller ones have an advantage of turning the larger ones. The larger ones have a disadvantage of turning the smaller ones. That's where you get your traction control. It's kind of a really neat concept. It's not based on springs or friction plates and stuff, so I think I like that better. So this will get upgraded, as well as I'm going to upgrade it to this. This is a Motive Gears 3.73 gear set. We're going to upgrade to that. As well as I bought quite a while ago, this is the Master Rebuild Kit, and it actually has more items in it than were listed. So I'm going to bring you in a little closer and kind of show you all the items in case you decide to get a kit like this. You might get what I'm getting here as well, because I was about to go order some of these parts, but I found them in this kit. So let's pull in a little closer. All right, I'm going to bounce around this kit a little bit, just kind of group things together, but we got a gasket for the cover. We got shims. We got the Pinion depth shims. We got the Pinion preload shims. And we also got the carrier side bearing shims. So we got 3 different shim packs. We also got 2 different slingers, which I didn't expect. And we got this baffle that's over here. So that's the piece that I was about to go purchase, but it came in this kit. Here are the 2 oil seals for the axles. These are the bearings for the pinion. These are the bearings for the differential, and this is the oil seal that sticks out what would be the back of the Dana 30. You get brand new nuts for the ring gear, and you get some silicone and some red Loctite, and you get the yellow marking compound for setting up your gears. For the most part, this entire build will be done using a lot of the instructions that are in this original Spicer axle maintenance manual. I found this online just Googling Dana 30 service manual, and it was like the first site that came up, allowed you to download it for free. It's a 42-page document. I did not print every page. Some of it deals with drum brakes in the front, and so and actually this as a rear axle, so I did not print those pages. So I printed the pages I needed. So I'm going to be following this. I've had this book for years. I read through it as well just to understand, but it actually, I'm pretty sure has a lot of missing information, and actually has 1 or 2 things I think that are out of order. The other thing that I'm going to follow is when it comes to actually doing the for setting up the ring gear and everything about the gear, we'll be following. This is what came with the Motive gear. So we'll be following these. When it comes time to actually meshing in and stuff like that, we'll follow the instructions here. And then I also, there's ways, I put this little thing together to help me understand, because you read through the stuff and they talk about, your pinion's going to have numbers on it, and if it says minus, you really add shims, and how does that make sense? I'm not sure it makes sense to everybody. And every time I read it, I have to be very careful how you read it. So I basically put this thing together where I'm going to just track all the things I have. Again, we're just trying to get to a starting position. Everything is based on doing a whole bunch of work to get this pinion set at the right depth, and all of that has to do with the pinion depth is the distance between the center line of the ring gear, which is also the center line of your axle. It's the rotating assembly. The center line of that to the head of the pinion, and we're going to call that measurement A, which is your pinion depth. And then all that is set based on everything from that surface to the actual housing surface, and I'm calling that B, which is your pinion spacing. Pinion spacing, as I know down here, that includes the thickness of this head, the thickness of the oil slinger that's going to be behind here, the thickness of the bearing, which is the bearing and the race. It's going to be the thickness of some shims that we put in here, and the thickness of the very last piece that goes in here underneath that cup is the baffle. And so I got all those things make up this. It depends on how far out this piece sets. Now, what I'm going to show you here in a second is these pinion gears have markings on them. The The standard for this axle, the Dana 30 axle, this pinion depth by standard wants to be 2.250. That's 2¼ inches. And then what happens is manufacturers make a batch of ring and pinions, and then they actually put it in a jig and they test it and they say, well, really 2.250 is not really where this particular batch meshes the best. We need to subtract or add to this depth to get the best match, and they mark those on the pinion. In fact, let's go look at the here's the original one, and I turn this over. Right here on the top is a 0. So 0 says we want to adjust from the standard 0. So realistically, this original Spicer, this is actually a Dana ED gear set, and it was actually machined perfectly. And so it needs to be, this pinion depth needs to be, for this original gear, it needs to be the 2.250. And therefore, and then you've got the housing, the actual housing. Now, it was machined separately, and so this, they had to then go in and determine, we know what the head size is, the spacer, the baffle, and end up coming up with what they determined was the shims. Well, I'm gonna go measure all that for the original one, and I'm gonna write it down on this line for the old. And because I want to then come up with what I think the spacings are for the new. You know, the head probably is a different thickness. I'm actually going to make sure that the slinger is, I'll measure it. So we got to incorporate this slinger. It's probably not the same dimension as the other slinger. We got to add all that stuff up and see what we want to start with the shims. Ultimate goal is I'm going to try and find out how many shims I need to put on the new gear to make that thing close to where we can get it at least started. So I'm going to start filling this out and start taking measurements of this old piece, get this first line filled out, then we'll start measuring the new equipment and see where it lands. All right, got everything measured. I wrote everything I measured or things that were given in blue, things that I calculated in red. So on the old pinion, the very back of the pinion, it's got that, again, it's got a 0 stamped on it, so I need 0 adjustment, so it's going to go with the standard 2250. So its pinion depth needs to be 2250. And just converse to that, the new pinion, it didn't give me the adjustment. It actually gave me what it wants the depth to be. So it's 2.247. I can just back calculate that it's basically a minus 0.003 adjustment for that. This will come in play here. And then the difference between the original, which was straight on the spec, and this one is minus 3. So the difference between the two systems is a minus 0.003. That'll come into play in a second. I measured the things I called fixed, the things within this B range here that are fixed, like the pinion head itself, the shim, the baffle, and the race. Those things are all fixed. The only thing that's in here that's not included in that is the shims. So when I added up, and I basically measured them all out over here, added them up, but I get 2439 for the fixed things on the old setup, and the shims measured out at 25 thousandths, giving me a total of 2.464 for my B dimension. Now remember that anytime I want to reduce the A dimension, I have to add to the B dimension. If I want to add to the A dimension, I then reduce the B dimension. So the total that we have, again, on the old setup for B is 2464. And the new setup, I need this pinion head to be 0.247, which is 3 thousandths closer to the center line. So it's a minus 3. So to get this minus 3, I have to add 3 to this side. So if I come to this total distance and I add 3 thousandths, I get that I want my new B pinion spacing to be 2467. In order to get that, if I take that and subtract what I have in the fixed piece of this dimension, it leaves me with 44 thousandths. So the original setup had 25 thousandths to make up the difference to get there. I'm going to need 44 thousandths. So I'm going to get all this stacked up, and we'll go from there. All right, just for the record, the original shims that came out, it was 3 different shims. One was a 5 thousandths, a 10,000, 10,000. That's the 25 thousandths that I've labeled as the original. And then the new Motive Gear Master Rebuild Kit came with these 5 shims, a 10,000th, 12, 12, 15, and a 20. And as we've calculated, I need 44,000. So if I use the 20 and the 2 12s, that gives me exactly that 44,000. So this is what I'm going to start with as far as shimming for the new Pinion. And this is just a starting point. There's a lot of crazy calculations just to kind of get a starting point. This could easily change. And I think I've got some more shims that should also fit this if I need to kind of manipulate this just a little bit. But I'm going to start stacking the Pinion now. So I'm just about ready to get this Pinion installed, kind of for the first time. What you saw a little while ago was, first of all, I put the oil slinger on and the new bearing. This bearing, the cage itself, sits higher than the inner race. And so the only way to really press this on, I've got a hydraulic press, but the only way to press this on is to have a sleeve that'll push directly on the inner race itself. I didn't have anything like that. So instead of using a press, you saw where I used heat to get that to drop on. That's just another great way of doing it. Next, I went and bought a second race for this exact bearing, and you also saw me taking this down. It took 4 passes to get this to a smallest enough diameter where it will just slide into the housing. If you're doing something like that, make sure between each time you let it completely cool. It took about a minute and a half in front of a fan to get to room temperature, and then we would try and slide it down in there. But after 4 passes, very light passes, just so you're trying to keep it round. And I got it labeled red here to make sure I know it's a setup bearing. So this is temporary. You know, this is new, this is new, this is new, this is temporary. Here are the shim pack, the 44,000 shim pack I'm hoping to go with. Here is the baffle. And then as far as the nuts, this is the original nut. You can see it's punched here a couple times. They do that in 3 places to create an interference thread. I really don't want that while I'm testing this. And you know, here's the new nut. They did it a little bit different, but the same concept. When you punch it through like that, this is now not round anymore. It's a little bit triangular. I want to preserve that, but I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to grind it down to about where those punches are and see if I can get back to where the backside is rounded. I'm going to use that for all my setup, taking it on and off these threads, so I'm not kind of compressing those threads. So, and then ultimately when we do the final install, we'll actually go back to this nut. So I'm going to get this ground down, and then we'll start getting this thing just kind of set into the housing for the first time. And something else just to note, the original Pinion had a Koyo bearing up front and a Timken bearing in the rear, and it's just the opposite. The new kit came with a Timken bearing for the front and a Koyo for the rear. And the reason that kind of comes up, I'm now want to do a setup bearing for the rear of this as I'm doing the setup on this, and I was going to install the final new Koyo race. But if I do that, I'm going to I want to grind the inside of this out a little bit to create a setup bearing, and I don't want to use this bearing in that race. So I'm actually going to I'm going to thin this outside diameter of the race of this down and the inside diameter here, and I'm actually use this complete set just for my setup. The rear bearing has nothing to do with, you know, how this thing is going to, the depth this is going to create. I just need something to hold it still. So we'll create a complete setup, bearing and race out of this set, and then later when we do the final install, we'll move over to this set. All right, we're gonna get this first test setup put in there. First, we're gonna start with this baffle. Goes with this flange side, kind of facing down. Get that stuck in there. Then here's our 44 thousandths shim. Get those in there. Next will be our setup race. One marked with red. I got it left in there tight. You gotta get it in there straight or it gets kind of hung up. And then finally the this piece. Okay. Now I'm going to actually lay this thing, turn it sideways so I can get the other end of this stuff assembled, and we got to get that tightened down to about, I think it's 10 inch-pounds. Alright, on this side we're going to put in that setup race. This is the original race that I've shaved down a little bit so it just kind of fits in there, just kind of snug. The key to these though, you still got to get them in there super straight. They get hung up. That should be it. And then the original bearing that I trimmed the inside out, it would go next. Then the yoke. I'm going to go ahead and put in the washer. So go this way. And then my setup nut. Now notice I've not put in, the key is I've not put in the little small shims that are your preload shims, and I've not put in the seal here because this has got to come in and out several times. The preload does not need to be preloaded for this testing, and then we don't want to mess up that new the new seal, so there's no reason to put it in there either. Let's run this up a little bit. Okay, here I'm going to slow down. I'm going to take it up real slow. We want to put in 10 inch-pounds of rotational pull on this, and that'll be our setup compression on those springs. That'll get all that stuff that's making up that back spacing, get it nice and tight so we can get a good true reading. Okay, there's a little bit of, alright, those bearings kind of set back in so it loosens back up. Okay, there's 9. Let's turn it just a smidgen more. Okay, there's 10. Okay, so I showed the details of that. That's gonna happen quite a bit next as we start adjusting that 44 thousandths. We'll have to do this whole same thing. Won't show you all the details of that again, but let me get this thing spun back down. Now there certainly are different ways to do this, and one of the other ways to do it is to follow the fact that this pinion gear has the pinion spacing written on it, 2.247, and that's the distance between the top of the pinion and the center line of your rotating assembly, this axle or the bearing, whatever you want to call it, even the ring gear. And there's certainly a way you can, there's pucks you can put in here and make a bunch of measurements. I made this jig when I did my AMC 20. You can see how I use that there. Because it doesn't fit and I'd have to modify it a whole bunch, I elected not to do it this way to try and to measure that. I tried to, I'm actually going from the approach of just taking what was originally in here and making measurements there. We will get it super close and then we will dial it in next. But I just wanted to mention there are other ways of getting this depth kind of close, but I'm going to take this approach this time. So now I'm going to go back in and go ahead and let's get the ring gear mounted on to the new differential. All right, ring gear installed very easily and no issues there. Got them torqued down. Next thing we got to do is we got to put these differential bearings on the sides, but I don't want to take these new ones and press them on because the shims that we'll be dealing with next are going to be between this differential and this bearing, and we're going to have to take this on and off and adjust this carrier once it's in the system lane this direction, you know, left and right. And in order to do that, these are going to have to come on and off quite a bit. So I want to create some setup bearings. The problem is these new bearings are Timken. They came with a kit, and the ones that were in the original open diff were Koyo. So I can't just take the old ones and make setups. I just don't want to do that. It's just not the right thing to do. So I'm going to go pick up 2 of these. That way I can, again, grind out the inside a little bit, so they'll just slide on here, and what will allow us to make those changes. The other thing I noticed, and I didn't see this on the last motive gear ring gear that I installed, but they've actually got a 0.006 thousandths written on here. In the instructions, it specifically says that the backlash between this gear and the pinion gear, in the written instructions, it needs to be between 7,000 and 9,000. I'm thinking that this 6 thousandths mean that when they tested this specific gear and meshed it in the way they wanted it, they found it best meshed at 6 thousandths. So I'm going to call their tech support and see if that's what that means. That'll just give me some better direction on that. But meanwhile, I'm also going to go find some of these. All right, the new bearings came in. It was just the bearing, not the race. This is the race that actually goes with the bearing that came with the kit. I went ahead and ground out the inside, just like I did before on the other side. I've already shown that. But ground these out, so now these fit super snug. It'll go on like this. And it fits super snug. You get it just right, and it goes in like it there. Now it feels loose, but it's really super tight. So I've ground these down where they both fit. These are now my setup bearings. I'm going to use the new races that will be my, the race that gets used in the end. These are the bearings that came in the kit. These will be the bearings that I use in the end. So those, we're not going to use those now. And then I went ahead and took off from the original differential. I went ahead and pulled those old bearings out because I wanted to see what kind of shims they had. And I went ahead and measured them up, and basically the old carrier needed 88 thousandths in shims to make it all work. Well, in my case, that's kind of a guess because I'm changing the differential probably has a different width. I'm also changing the bearings. These are Timken bearings. The other ones were Koyo bearings, the old original ones. So nothing about this new setup can I really say, oh, here, let's base it on anything of the old setup. Can't do it. So I do have those shims here to start that. The rebuild kit did come with 13 new shims, anywhere from there's 2 60,000ths all the way down to 2 10,000ths and a whole bunch between. Again, 13 different new shims here. If I need to, I can also use these shims. I'm actually going to put a little spreadsheet together like I did last time that shows me all the different combinations of thicknesses I can get out of these combination of shims. We'll be seeing that in a little bit. What I got to do next, and again, I'm following these directions. I highly encourage you, if you're doing a project like this, don't just follow somebody's video. I am going to try and show you all the steps I take, but what I can't do is also let you see all the things that I read and understand about this process. That's something, again, this is a free download for this. At least download this and read through it, understand what it is. I'm following the basic outline of this, but again, I'm going to pull away from it because, again, I'm changing carrier. So what I got to do, the big project I got to do now is I want to get this sit back in the casing, in the inside the axle carrier, and determine how much shim do I need to get zero end play. And the way I'm going to do that is I am going to put some shims on this side to force this differential over to this side, hoping that I still, let's say, need a 500,000ths. That way, if I have got 500,000ths, I can measure that with the dial indicator that I need 5 more thousandths. If I know how much I put in here already and I need 5 more thousandths, that'll give me my zero end play shims that I need, and I need to know that number. So that's what we're going to do next. I've dropped the differential in place now. I added 50,000 shim to this side to shove this differential that way as much as we can because I want to avoid it contacting the pinion. The pinion has nothing to do with what we're doing here. I need it not to ever contact the pinion, but I started with 50,000 here to try and minimize how much end play we're going to have. If I pull this completely to the right, I've got that set at 0. You re-zero that. And I'm trying to pull down here because this thing will kind of cock this way and it gives you a false read. You got to pull down here, trying to pull straight and this way, not let it cock. If I pull here, I got 0, and then if I move over here, I get 8 thousandths. So right now, again, I got 50 thousandths in there. Another 8 thousandths of space is available, so that's 58 thousandths. 58. If I put 58 thousandths worth of shim somewhere, either all over here, all over there, or split it between here, I got 0 end play. I'm going to use that to base all the little chart I'm going to put together that helps me decide how much I can put on here based on the shim thicknesses that I have available to me. I'll try and run the course there. If I think I'm still way out of whack there, I will then just buy another shim pack, see if I can get some smaller shims to get in between some of those. But let me, 58 thousandths, let me take that. I'm going to build my spreadsheet now, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here is my simple spreadsheet, and while I did this in Excel, this could easily be done on a blank sheet of paper, and it's definitely useful. I use this on my AMC 20 rear end, and it just allowed me to create these combinations a lot quicker. So, and I sit and do this in front of the TV, and so it's real easy to do. But this whole sheet is based on that 0 end play that we just discovered being 58 thousandths. What you see here is a grid on the top, which represents the passenger side, or what we'll see in the video will be on the left side of the screen, left side of that differential, and then the bottom grid is the driver's side. So, because we'll be putting shims on both sides. And then the first column here is quantity. That's the number of each of these specific shim sizes that I have available to me. The second column, size, is the actual thickness of each shim. So you can see I physically have one 3,000 shim, I have one 4,000 shim, and I have 4 different 10,000 shims. So these are the different combinations. And what I did for this first set was just arbitrarily pick kind of a thickness, what I thought maybe the minimum I would ever need on that passenger side, and started there. So the first set on the passenger side, I'm going to use the 1 10,000 shim, giving me 10 thousandths on the passenger side. And then to complement that on the driver side, I'll need to use a 3 thousandths, a 15 thousandths, and a 30 thousandths to equal a total of 48 thousandths on that side. Adding that to the 10 thousandths, I get a total of 58,000. My target is 58,000. And then so I'm right on my target, so the delta is 0. The second set is basically just the next smallest increment I can. I can't get to 11,000 with my shim combinations, but I can get to 12 by simply just using a single 12 on the passenger side, and then I've got a complement there on the driver's side. Again, I can get right to that 58 thousandths with a delta of 0. Couple things to note is if you go back to the passenger side, looking at this total line, look how based on the small number of shims that I own, how many combinations I can get and how close they are. I can do 10 thousandths, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. I can't get to 21 and I can't get to 11. I should be able to dial this thing in pretty well. If it turns out that I need more than 27 thousandths on the passenger side, I can just continue making more sets and come up with those combinations. Last thing I want you to note on this is under set 7 at the very bottom, the delta was -1. What that means to me is that my total shims that I could come up with via the available shims I have to me was only, on the grand total there, 57 thousandths. So I'm 1 shy. So it's going to be 1 thousandth shy of being 0 end play. But for this portion of the setup, that is not an issue. Ultimately down the road, and we'll get to more about it later, but down the road, we're going to be adding shims to this to create preload. So this is not the final set. This is just, if we have 0 end play, we can get good patterns, and that's what we're looking for. All right, so the next major goal is to test that pinion depth and get it adjusted. And we got to do that by doing a bunch of processes over and over again. And I was reading through this Dana Spicer guidebook that we're going through, and they really assume that you're using the same carrier, and they kind of go around the horn to get to the answer, and I don't really like that. I just finished rebuilding my AMC rear, the AMC 20, Model 20, and I followed the information on this book and came up with an approach that, based on this book, that I felt very comfortable with, and it really applies, that process really applies to any axle you do, as long as you know the specs and the torques and that type of stuff. Ultimately, we're just trying to mesh gears, right? So I'm going to follow that process that I came up with my AMC 20 based on this book, and we're going to do that. I did just edit this video up to this point, and we're already at 32 minutes, and I think those kind of run kind of long for some people. So I'm going to end this video here, but get directly on getting this meshed in part 3, and we'll get that to you as soon as possible. So right now I'm going to go over to the bench. I got a giveaway I want to do, as well as I want to talk about some new things that I bought for my Jeep project, and what my plans are in modifying some cool stuff. So it'll be talking about something that'll happen in the future and kind of give you guys opportunity to make some comments and give me some direction. So, all right, a few final thoughts. I am continuing with a Project Rowdy keychain giveaway. Project Rowdy is the name of the Jeep that I'm restoring, and that's what this axle is going to go in. I'm going to give away one of these keychains to anyone that leaves a comment under this video. Just leave a comment, and somewhere in the comment put in hashtag Project Rowdy. You'll see a description or an example below. And after the first 1,000 views, I will select a winner, and I'll be able to get this mailed to you and contact you. I do have winners from previous videos. I wanted to go ahead and announce on episode 44. Double R Restorations, Russ, congratulations. I'll get contacted with you and get that off to you. Episode 45 was Kerry Werner. I've already contacted Kerry and got his keychain to him. Episode 46 was LT Medic 3. I've already contacted and got his keychain to him. And then just now, another new winner is episode 47 is James Mack. James, I'll be reaching out to you as well and get that keychain to you. So again, just leave a comment and put Project Rowdy at the bottom, and I'll select from those people in an automatic process, and we'll get a keychain to you for this project. All right, the second thing I want to mention is, I'm building a spreadsheet and I'm just watching TV. I do a lot of research, looking at Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for parts and things, ideas and that type of stuff. And I came across this front bumper, and it's got a matching rear bumper. It's the 3-inch double tube. Again, I'm trying to keep this Jeep. You're going to see a lot of things where on my Jeep project, a lot of it's kind of an old school look, and I remember back when I fell in love with Jeeps, most of them had this double tube type bumper. So this is going to be my front bumper, and I've got an idea. They make these bumpers that has kind of a built-in bull bar, but to me they sit too high. And they kind of block your blinkers and your lights, and I just don't like that for some reason. Never have liked that. So I went with this, and I found this week on Facebook Marketplace, and picked this up and a matching back bumper. And they're used. It's got to be sanded down and kind of reworked. But I got an idea. And while I picked this one up without the bull bar, I'm going to try and add a bull bar. Rough Country has a bull bar I'm going to get, and I'm actually going to kind of blend the two. Have this mounted and then have the bull bar come out from underneath it, maybe on the front, and maybe French it in or something like that, and have it come up. But I want the crossbar to come up high enough where I can still get a fair lead in here if I want to put a winch on the front. Not really in the plans, but in case I do, I'll leave it high enough, you know, maybe about 5 inches or so, a 5-inch gap. But I want to be able to kind of blend those two technologies, have the old school look of the double tube, but as well as have that bull bar, because I think that does kind of look kind of neat. I've always kind of wanted to put one on my truck, so I'll play with it. I'm going to get that bull bar in and kind of mock it up and do some things, but that's going to be a little bit down the road. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'm constantly picking parts up off of online that I've got ideas of things I got to do. There's a couple other things, and as soon as I find them and pick those up, I'll share those with you too. So I hope you enjoy the video. A lot of detail. Sometimes it's too much detail for people. Sometimes it's enough detail, again, where it shows you at least a process of how you can do this. There's so many ways to do these axles. This is not the only way. But this is going to be the approach that I used in a previous axle, and it's going to work for this axle. But I'm going to jump right on getting those gears meshed up, and I'll get that all recorded and have that the next part, and we'll have that available really soon. So if you like this type of content, please subscribe to the channel. The analytics always like when you push the like button. That shows that you maybe like the content or whatever, but it really helps the next guy that's looking for this type of content find this type of video. So anyway, I appreciate every one of you, and thank you so much. Good luck on the Project Rowdy keychain giveaway, and we'll see you soon.
Jack it up.